know, Scott had a particular question and story that he wanted to bring up with you.
Oh, okay.
Definitely,
What's that?
definitely. All right. So I'm a, I was I'm old, so I saw Ozzy Osbourne two times. Saw
Ugh,
Ozzy twice back in I think it was 1980 81, 82. They
yep.
played at a Day on the Green, and then they played a little bitty club in Santa Cruz in a gymnasium.
Ugh.
And I had, I had heard the new Ozzy Blizzard of Oz album, and I was blown away. And I don't have no idea how we got tickets. We go there, and the opening band was so loud, and I'm like,
Hmm?
why is the bass player singing with the microphone strung up over his head and just belting it? And it was Motorhead. I'd never heard of Motorhead before at the time. So then Ozzy comes out, and Randy Rhoads just blew me away. So I mean, the guitar was bigger than he was. So anyway, now Lee KersLake, you did a benefit for Lee KersLake. Tell us a little about that.
Yeah, and first I have to say, of course, I've always been a metalhead, right? And I also like jazz and fusion. A lot of my drum influences are Terry Bozzio from UK and Zappa. So I do a lot of very technical kinds of drumming and things like that too. But I'm also a metalhead at heart, right? So, and the thing about Lee, first of all, I'm a huge Ozzy fan, and I was just really upset when I had found out when in 2019 that he came out and said he had 7 months to live. He was fighting a severe battle with cancer, and it was just a mess. So his dying wish was to get his platinum albums for Diary of a Madman and Blizzard of Oz. Now, that was something that I followed for many, many years, because from the time of Blizzard of Oz until Lee died, right? A couple of years ago, there were always the huge lawsuits and fights over royalties, right? Especially with Bob Daisley and Lee KersLake with Ozzy and Sharon.
Right, right.
And I always followed that as a kid anyway, because I just found it so amazing, even before I was involved in the industry. And so when I heard Lee say that, I was like, you know what? I took it upon myself to do something about that, to try to get him his platinum albums for Diary and Blizzard. That was his dying wish, and it just broke my heart when I heard that. And I know up to that point, Sharon and Ozzy absolutely refused to give him those.
Right.
So I went about trying to make that happen to get his platinum albums for him, and then wouldn't you know it, Sharon and Ozzy called me, and that originally didn't start out too well, I must say. In their defense, I'm sure they were really pissed, and I know they were, as a matter of fact, because they told me so in so many ways. I can tell you that,
Wow.
and yeah, and what I can go do to myself. And I was like, well, let's try to calm things down here, guys. And so I really, and I understand, from both sides. I understand from Lee's side, and I also understand from Sharon and Ozzy's side. When you have somebody suing you, and the two parties are wrapped up in a legal war for 39 years, it's
Right.
crazy. So I said, look, guys, I said, you know, this is something that needs to be done. I said, Lee has no animosity towards you guys. I said, I want you to know that. And I know that because he told me that. I said, and I'm just, relaying that. And that, then I think they kind of understood. I said, look, he's saying he has 7 months to live. You have to do this, you know? And so at first they said no. And then we kind of hung up. And then they called me back and they said, look, here's what we're going to do. We know you're having Lee at the Metal Hall of Fame Gala. We're going to send you the platinum albums for Diary of a Madman, Blizzard of Oz. Surprise Lee with those. And then Ozzy told me that he was going to write a note in there as well because, he hadn't seen him in so long. So sure enough, I get the platinum albums here at my house, and I bring them with me to California at the gala, and I surprised Lee with those, and he was just shocked. He could not believe it. And then I read the letter that Ozzy wrote him. I have it here too, actually, of course. And so yeah, that was just, I was just so happy to do that. That was all about him for sure.
Wow. That's a cool story. I really like that. I mean, the people who played on Ozzy's album didn't tour. None of them really toured, correct? Except Randy and Ozzy.
Well, you had Bob Daisley, right?
Bob, the bass
And
player.
yeah, and Don Airey, the keyboard player,
Correct.
right? And I believe they did some shows over in the UK, but when they came over here, it was Rudy and Tommy Aldridge.
Correct. Correct.
And also with Don Airey as well. And Sharon and Ozzy told me, originally they wanted Tommy even before they got Lee, and but he was tied up, so they couldn't do anything, and that's how they found Lee and brought Lee in. And what an amazing job Lee did from Uriah Heep to Ozzy. I mean, unbelievable.
Wow, yeah. And I read a lot of stuff that they would basically come up with stuff and show it to Ozzy, and he would kind of like it or dislike it, and then go back and do what he was famous for doing. But no, those guys did a great when that needle hit the record for the first time that I heard it. It changed. I believe it changed everything from guitar. I mean, Eddie Van Halen definitely, but with Randy Rhoads was just, he was so clean. You know what I mean? So clean in his technique.
A turning point in music.
Yeah. Well, he pioneered a whole different genre of guitar playing, And of course, there's always Eddie versus Randy. I mean, look, can't take anything away from Eddie, right? With his sound and all of that. But Randy was just, as a musician, there was nothing like that, and never will be again.
And they were actually kind of in the day. They were kind of they were foes, I guess you would call it, back in the day. And Van Halen made it first, but then Quiet Riot did make it, but Randy wasn't in it, which was kind of ironic.
Yeah, which is crazy, right? And they got their first, gold album, the first metal band to get a gold album, number one. Well, not gold album, but number one album. Yeah. And, so that was just unbelievable. And that was without Randy, unfortunately. But yeah, that evolution is just unbelievable.
Definitely. And from what I was reading, that also that some of the songs that Randy brought into Ozzy were old Quiet Riot songs. Is that true, or would you know?
Yeah, I had heard that too. And I know from everybody involved playing in the band, I know that, Randy brought in a lot of his own ideas. But then again, too, Lee KersLake and Bob Daisley wrote a lot of Blizzard and Diary, too. So
correct.
Yeah.
Hey, Jerry, you ever been plowed?
Well, hell yes, I've been plowed, but that's beside the point. I work at a prison.